Listener-supported Iowa Catholic Radio, 1150 AM KWKY Des Moines, 94.5 FM K233BT Des Moines, 88.5 FM KIHS Adel. Online anytime at iowacatholicradio.com.
Support for Faith on Trial and Iowa Catholic Radio provided in part by Imogene Ingredients.
Our freedom of conscience and religion is being challenged by laws and regulations imposed by secular society. It's time to hear from the top Christian litigators in the nation who have come forward to tell us the truth and help us defend our faith.
Hear ye, hear ye. All rise. Faith on Trial with Defender of the Faith, Deacon Mike Mano, is in session.
Welcome to Faith on Trial, where we examine the influence of law on society and people of faith. I'm Deacon Mike Mano, your host, and sitting in for Gina today is our old friend Lisa Bourne. Lisa, how are you?
I am fine.
Good. I'm glad you could make it here. Gina, unfortunately, had a death in the family, and so she's out for the week. So we appreciate you coming in and joining us. And I have to say again, as I've said before, you're the one that started me in this stuff. You were working for the diocese at the time, and you called me to come in to host or co-host a show with the bishop on something that I had just written about for the Catholic newspaper here, the Mirror. And that's what started this whole ball rolling. So our listeners have you to blame if they don't like the show.
Well, that's. I guess we can categorize that under no good deed goes unpunished.
That's right, something like that, something like that. And of course, I see you almost every week at the Latin Mass, documenting it in photographs and that. And you do a very good job. We got a calendar out with the Latin Mass.
Thank you so much.
It's very nice.
It's a joy to be there. It's a joy to document it. I'm honored to be asked and thrilled to do that.
And I can hear you behind me when you're in the chapel doing things. I can hear the click, 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 right? Because I sit right there.
Right.
Is where I sit in choir. Yeah. So
yep, I do my best to be like a little church mouse and be seen and heard as little as possible. Well, to the extent that I can. Well,
we appreciate it because now we have this photographic record of what we're doing over there. You know, I started over at St. Anthony's when Monsignor Chido was still in his, I guess, full health, and was doing that. And he asked me to come over, and so I drive over there on Sunday nights to do it. And then I had the stroke and couldn't do it anymore. And then it moved to our parish, St. Augustine, and I said, well, let me give it a try again. And so I don't have to do very much now. I don't have to read anything. I only have a couple phrases that I have to memorize as I distribute communion and give out blessings. So, but anyway, it's very nice. I don't know if you heard some time ago we had on the FBI whistleblower who talked about the Latin Mass and the investigating of the Latin Mass.
No.
Yeah. We had that. We had that. Yeah.
It's really great to see you at the Mass, whether at St. Anthony or at St. Augustine.
Thank you very much.
Knowing you outside of that and knowing you there as well is a blessing.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that. We've got an interesting show today. We're going to talk to Robert Muse, who is from the American Freedom Law Center. There is a screwy bill going through the Michigan legislature that will make it so that if you hurt somebody's feelings, that you can go to jail.
That's a nice term that you use to qualify that, screwy.
Yeah, so. It is. And we have, and I think I sent you a copy of the bill and a copy of one of the news reports about it. So We'll talk to Robert. We'll get to the main story there. And then Jonathan Butcher, who is from the Heritage Foundation, he's going to talk about some of the SCOTUS rulings that affect education, and he's the education expert there. So we're going to talk to him about all things education, whatever he wants to talk about. You know, we always have on these folks from the Heritage Foundation. Gina and I have said this before. We don't go a month without having somebody from the Heritage Foundation on because there's so many people there that know really what they're talking about, and there's so many people out here in the news media that have no idea of what it is they're talking about. So
they are a great resource.
Yeah, they are a wonderful resource. So anyway, do you have a prayer to open us up with today?
I absolutely do. It's great to be with you, and we will give special mention to Gina and her family
right,
this
and ask
time.
People to keep her in their prayers.
Absolutely. God of peace, bring your peace to our violent world. Peace in the hearts of all men and women, and peace among the nations of the earth. Turn to your way of love those whose hearts and minds are consumed with hatred. Strengthen us in hope and give us the wisdom and courage to work tirelessly for a world where true peace and love reign among the nations and in the hearts of all. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Lisa. And we're going to take a break right now. And when we come back, we're going to have Robert Muse from the American Freedom Law Center in Michigan with us. You're listening to Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio.
Iowa Catholic Radio would like to thank our business partner, Dino Storage, 2725 2nd Avenue in Des Moines, offering monthly rentals, indoor climate-controlled storage, and package delivery to your unit. Learn more at dinostorage.com.
Dad, how are things going in St. Vincent de Paul?
Awesome, Zoe. Our 6th Avenue, Army Post Road, and Windsor Heights locations are really busy. Steve Haveman, Executive Director of St. Vincent de Paul, thanking you for your continued support.
How can people help St. Vincent de Paul, Dad?
By donating and shopping.
St. Vincent de Paul helps everyone, even kids' lives.
Yes, Zoe, even kids' lives. Thanks for shopping at our St. Vincent de Paul thrift stores.
St. Vincent de Paul helps everyone, even kids.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by CTO. Your support has helped thousands of students attend our Catholic schools. CTOIowa.org. At CTO, the bottom line, it's for the kids and their future.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by the Sarah Vocations Ministry, including the St. Sarah Club of Des Moines and the Sarah Club of Council Bluffs. Sarah is an apostolate of the Worldwide Catholic Church dedicated to fostering and supporting priesthood and religious vocations. Sarahans strive to accomplish their mission through prayer, fellowship, and service to the bishop, priests, sisters, and all in religious formation, and in doing so to increase their own holiness. Learn more at joinsarah.org, joinserra.org. Thank you, Sarahans, for your support of Iowa Catholic Radio.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio provided by Paul Martin and Paul Mitchell, owners of Imogene Ingredients. Imogene Ingredients supply specialized feed ingredients for livestock and pet diets to improve maternal and young animal health in both conventional and organic production.
And we are back. You're listening to Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio, and we have Lisa Bourne with us today instead of Gina. Thank you for filling in again, Lisa. Appreciate that. And with us on the phone line now is Robert Muse, who is a co-founder of the American Freedom Law Center in Michigan. And Robert, I read the story about this thing that's floating through your legislature, and I got to thinking, this is starting to sound a lot like California. You want to kind of explain what the new hate crime bill is supposed to do?
Well, great to be with you, Deacon Mike and Lisa. Yeah, here at this last election in Michigan, we had on our ballot Proposal 3, which is the most permissive abortion regulation now in the country as part of our Constitution, and it brought out all the left-wing voters, and we got Governor Gretchen Whitmer for yet another term, and Dana Nessel, the Attorney General, and they are hardcore left-wing radicals. And our legislature flipped for the first time in a long time from Republican to Democrat. So they're ramming stuff down our throats. And you mentioned we're like California. We're like California and New York combined. I mean, it's crazy. I don't even recognize the state, that I've lived in for 20-plus years. It was generally conservative for the most part. Certainly the legislature, the locals, are very conservative. When it comes to national elections, we tend to get a lot of money gets thrown in with the unions and everything from outside the state that tends to influence these local elections. But there's a very, very strong pockets of conservatism here in Michigan. Well, one of the latest ventures of this House, the legislature here in Michigan, aside from all sorts of gun regulations that they're trying to jam through, they have this House bill. It's House Bill number 474, which was it's a revision of an existing law, what was described as the ethnic intimidation law, but they've made this now a hate crime law. Now, Dana Nessel, our Attorney General, when she took over, she created this hate crimes unit. everything's hate crime. Although I don't even know if they've had one prosecution in however many years, because it's non-existent, right? They just like a lot of these laws.
Listen to their arguments. We're all haters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Or white supremacists. Yeah.
No, and there's none. I mean, it's not this rampant problem. The rampant crime, they turn a blind eye to all this violent crime they're letting go on. Like we watch with horror with Black Lives Matter and Antifa, burning down our cities here in Michigan as well, and they turn a blind eye to that. But they go after this false notion that there's all this hatred towards people of different sexual orientations and gender identity. So they modify this ethnic intimidation act to be to broadly cover, and they obviously add new categories: sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression. They always have to clue those in there. That's what this is all about. Now it prohibits. And there's nothing wrong with this, the use of force or violence against an individual or causing bodily injury to another individual when we already have crimes that prohibit that. But they added in here, intimidate another individual. And that's where the problem comes in. Because when you read their definition of intimidation, it's very broadly construed, causing someone to feel terrorized or frightened or feel threatened in some way. Now, what's very interesting is they add in here, intimidate does not include constitutionally protected activity or conduct that serves a legitimate purpose. Well, certainly constitutionally protected conduct serves a legitimate purpose in and of itself, in that it promotes public debate on issues, and it's constitutionally protected for a reason. That's good enough. Now, this bill right now is being got delayed in the Senate. And there's apparently going to be some rewriting or reworking. So much of these bills are just that the politicians do them to, appease a certain, voter bloc or, special interest group. I don't see how this law would withstand, current Supreme Court decisions. The First Amendment has very limited categories of speech that can be proscribed, that are carved out. One of them is true threats. And true threats, and this is a definition right from the Supreme Court, you have to communicate a serious expression of an intent to commit an act of unlawful violence, right? So it's not just hurting somebody's feelings or making somebody feel upset or, quoting from the Bible that might, offend, somebody of a particular sexual
that will
orientation.
Send them over the edge, yeah.
It would send them over the edge, but that is not prohibited as a matter of First Amendment. In fact, just this term, the Supreme Court issued an opinion on the application of statutes that try to criminalize true threats, and that was that Colorado case. And so not only did they say the First Amendment that the First Amendment requires the threat to be, as I described, a serious expression of intent to commit bodily harm, but it also requires the government to prove that a defendant had some subjective understanding of the nature of the threat. There had to be some conscious disregard of substantial risk. I think it was almost the language right from the statute. So they even raised the bar even higher to be able to prosecute under a statute that proscribes true threats. And this statute doesn't even proscribe true threats. It doesn't even make it past the language that they say, to intimidate somebody or to cause somebody to be in fear. I mean, it has to be more than that, right? There's a reason why the First Amendment is, the First Amendment. It protects off-putting speech. It protects that speech which might offend somebody. And so, first of all, I can't imagine there even being a successful prosecution under this. One of the interesting issues will be whether or not somebody can do a pre-enforcement challenge, because the other side will point to the fact that, well, look, it has this savings clause. It's not intended to proscribe speech that is constitutionally protected. But, in fact, that's exactly what it does. So this I don't know what the Senate's going to do, and it's there. I think they're probably looking at this latest Supreme Court decision and looking at this, and who knows what modifications they may make to this. But I would be absolutely shocked if anybody could actually have any success bringing anything under this statute in light of a number of Supreme Court cases. The Virginia versus Black cases, which was the True Threats case in the Supreme Court, dealing with cross burning on somebody's property, and they held the provision of that where it said that just a burning of a cross is per se evidence of the intent. The Supreme Court struck that down. There was this case in 1992, RAV versus City of St. Paul, where they had this bias-motivated crime, similar type thing in causing intimidation, and the Supreme Court struck it down. So I have a hard time seeing this statute really surviving the light of the day. Like I said, they had that savings provision in there, so it might withstand a pre-enforcement facial challenge. But I'd like to see what set of facts where it's just speech that this thing could actually be employed constitutionally. I don't think it exists. Like I said, if you want to prohibit somebody from, engaging in acts of violence or property damage, we all agree that's not, that should not be condoned in our society. But to say that somehow just, mere words can cause these sorts of harms, that's not going to withstand constitutional scrutiny, in my view.
I think the intent may be more to chill than to
exactly.
Because I can just see, as this is written here, they talk about sexual orientation or gender identification or expression. I can see that threatening people that if you don't use their right pronoun or the pronoun that they choose, that could be a violation of this law.
Yeah, and your point about the chilling effect is very valid, because that would be the basis for doing a pre-enforcement challenge to this law, which I'd be more than willing to do. You got to have the correct plaintiffs, because the courts, whenever you get these hot button issues, they're one of the first things they do to dismiss a lawsuit. Say, well, you don't have standing. You haven't shown that there's going to be a likely threat of enforcement against you for the conduct that you're complaining of. And so that's always the tricky part with these pre-enforcements. But the concern about the chilling effect is exactly right. I tell people, look, don't be chilled. We'll fight this. You just keep going. You keep exercising your First Amendment rights. The government can't do this. Can't engage in this type of really chilling effect on your free speech. But it has its purpose, right? And it's exactly to appease a certain public, a certain interest group, special interest group, and to chill speech. That's
kind of like promising to forgive all student loans. I don't think they ever really thought they would get that through the Supreme Court, but it was political. It was political. All right, who's promoting all of this?
Yeah. Well, it's the Democrats in the House. Those who are, and Dana Nessel herself, she's a open lesbian, and she's all about protecting the rights. That's why one of the first things she did when she took over as the Attorney General is to create this hate crimes unit, again, to fight this phantom enemy of everybody who's out there engaging in hate crimes. It just doesn't exist. There's those advocacy groups that are out there behind this. Like I said, I don't know if this thing's even going to see the light of day. It's a House bill right now. It's being held up in the Senate because they're apparently going to be doing some rewriting. It hasn't been passed through both through the legislature and even made it to the desk yet to the governor. So we'll see if it does. And I think this latest Supreme Court case in that Colorado one may actually cause some of the legislatures. Now they have a very, very thin majority. And most people think it's going to be overwhelmingly flip during this next election cycle. So there's you still have your hardcore left-wing politicians, but you still have kind of your mainstream, middle-of-the-road Democrats who are kind of looking at this going, I'm not sure. This might be a bridge too far for us. So we'll see if it ends up making it through. It's getting a lot of publicity, negative publicity.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe those in the Senate are looking twice, look at this and thinking twice about, this isn't such a good idea right now.
Yeah, what is the R&D count in the Senate? Is it close at all?
It's very close. I think it's only 1 or 2 as well. Yeah,
okay.
We lost the majorities in the House and the Senate by the thinnest of margins. I think it's only just a couple of votes. So it's So some of these bills, and they're going to pay for some of these bills, especially like the gun control legislations and things that they're trying to put in, these red flag laws and everything else. Those are going to be on the voters' minds when it comes around for this next election. And I think they know it. And that's one of the reasons why they're actually trying to push some of this stuff through, because they know it's not going to be long-lived.
Okay.
In addition to the chilling, I'm wondering if they are maybe just throwing at the wall what they can and seeing what sticks. I'm just speculating there. And you mentioned that it's back for revision with the Senate. I'm wondering if, looking, as you mentioned, Robert, those Supreme Court cases, if they're looking at bolstering it to see what they can get through. You also mentioned a gun law. That's mentioned in this law as well. If you violate it in any way in possession of a firearm, it looks like they're just trying to get away with what they can. And I don't know, obviously you're there on the ground. You have a better sense of things there.
Yeah, they're flooding the zone, as it were, with all these types of legislation. This is just more of the same from this, from this administration, both on the legislative side and in the governor's office and in the attorney general's office. So I do think they're quite bold, and they're showing their true colors, when you step out into the light. And we're just going to keep fighting them at every chance we can. And we need to start taking some bold actions ourselves. Right? I always hate being on the defensive. Right? I like to be on the offensive. It'd be nice that when the Republicans take over, they actually do something. Right? And even like when you mentioned the President Biden with this loan forgiveness, executive order, which they knew. Pelosi, right? You had Roberts even quoted from Pelosi. They knew that this was just a political game, and now they can blame the conservative, appointed justices for why we're not paying off your kids' student loans. But the Republicans got to get out there and be banging the drum and just say, look, they made false promises to you. They lied to you. Right, we got to start turning this, exposing them for what they really are. These people are liars. It's not that the conservatives took anything away. Nancy Pelosi even noted that this was wrong. They were lying to you to buy your vote, and they were thinking that you were that stupid that you would just vote for them because they're going to give something to you. They have such little regard for you, and that they will lie to your face and make you these promises just to buy your vote when they full well knew that this was not they didn't have the authority to do this. We got to start, telling the American people what this really is and expose it for what it really is, right? And that's what this is too. This is just trying to promote a political agenda, weaponize the law to silence people with conservative views, and that's all this. And this intimidation, hate crimes law is. That's all it is. It's intimidation. And this idea about hate speech is the other thing too. There's no such thing as hate speech in terms of under the Constitution, right? There's very limited categories of speech that can be prohibited or prescribed in some manner. Fighting words is one that's a very, very narrow category. Incitement, a very, very narrow category, and true threats, as well as libel is one of the examples, and obscenities, even some where they can place some modifications on it. But there is no exception under the First Amendment for so-called hate speech. This idea that hate speech isn't protected. Well, hate speech isn't even a category that's exempted out, and for good reason. Right? Why is it hate speech? Because it offends you, or because I disagree with what your view is? And so I don't see this law actually being applied in any way. Just like I said, they created this hate crimes unit, but it doesn't prosecute anybody because there are no hate crimes. They create this, this phantom fear out there that there's all this, all these white supremacists running around looking to, engage in violence against people because of their, sexual orientation or race or whatever. Yeah. It's all about trying to divide, right? Because that's what we know. The great, the father of lies and the father of division is Satan, and that's what's behind all this. Yeah,
I hear every once in a while on the news the name of your governor coming up as a possible candidate for president. Is she making any moves or doing anything?
Well, it's interesting. She's been hiding out. She's pulling a Joe Biden, right? She's kind of going during COVID. She was all front and center, and that didn't go well, and she realized it didn't go well. and I don't even see her or hear. I don't see her on TV. I don't hear her on the radio. But my guess is that she's kind of jockeying for position, right? Because it's an interesting position that the Democrats are in right now, because you have the president right now, who would be the incumbent is of their party, and so they're trying to walk that tight line between he shouldn't be running for another term, and I should be the one. So I think she's keeping her powder dry. But everything I'm hearing, like on the radio and stuff, people who are talking about this are in the know in terms of fundraising and that sort of thing. It's my guess is that she's probably building up, trying to build up some side of a war chest of some sort, and getting the political powers aligned, as it were. But she's keeping her powder dry and hasn't officially announced. But her name and Governor Newsom are the two that I hear quite often. But, but publicly, I think she's staying in her basement like Biden.
Yeah, she I think escaped the last election. I think had that former police chief from Detroit been allowed on the ballot, that would have been
James Craig.
Yeah, a different race. Yeah,
there were a couple other candidates, and it was kind of a lot of funny business that went on there, because our Secretary of State is another one of these left-wing radicals, and we saw the debacle that happened here in the election in 2020 with President Trump and the counting of the votes, and the shutting down the machines and the last-minute dumping of ballots in Detroit. It was crazy what went on. But both James Craig and the other candidate's name escapes me, but they were two of the top front runners, and they submitted their signatures. And after the deadline for the signatures, they find out that apparently a company or a couple of the companies that they hired to do the canvassing to collect the signatures had problems in the past, unknown to them. The Secretary of State knew about it, and a large number of the signatures they submitted were invalidated, and there was no time to get new signatures, and so they didn't make it on the ballot.
That's too bad.
The election politics is crazy. It's unbelievable.
And you're right, it's election politics. Yeah. All right.
So we got to change those things.
You have a website. If people want to find out a little bit more, it's I think AmericanFreedomLawCenter.org. Is that correct?
Exactly. That is correct.
And people can find out what you are doing there. And you are one of these pro bono firms, so that the people you represent get that representation, I guess, free.
Exactly. Yeah, we're a nonprofit public interest law firm, so we're a 501c3, which means we have to rely on generous donations, because we don't charge our clients for the work, and we do a lot of pro-life work, especially representing the Red Rose Rescuers and others. Right. We don't charge our clients a penny, so we have to rely on the generosity of others who want to support our work.
And so if anybody has any loose change and they want to do something with it, besides giving it to Iowa Catholic Radio, which is also important, so we stay on the air, but if they want to split some of that, we ought to have an agreement with you where we get 10% of what you take in from our audience, but we'll let you have it all. But it would be a good place to stick some loose change, because they do good work up there, and it's not just in Michigan. You're all over. I've seen your cases in other states and before the Supreme Court. So you are very active up there. Yep. Well, Robert,
across the country.
It was nice to have you back. We haven't had you on in a while, and we will not try and go so long again this time, but we appreciate your time. And again, that's AmericanFreedomLawCenter.org. We certainly appreciate your time and appreciate your work. God bless you and what you're doing, and we will talk to you again.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're going to take a short break right now. We will be right back after these messages. You're listening to Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio.
Would you like to highlight a birthday, anniversary, or other special occasion? You can do that by underwriting a day of broadcasting on Iowa Catholic Radio. For a monthly gift of $300 or more, your message will be heard on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network throughout the day of your choosing. It's the perfect way to honor your memories and milestones while supporting your favorite radio station. Dates go quickly, so reserve yours now. Call 515-223-1150 or email Deacon Mark at iowacatholicradio.com.
Thank you to our business partner, McDonald Imaging Solutions. Family-owned, Marty and his son Caleb McDonald offered branded corporate apparel, logoed promotional products, marketing solutions, and printed items. Learn more at mcdonaldimimagingsolutions.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio comes from CTO. Your contribution to CTO helps families send their children to our Catholic schools who otherwise could not afford it. In giving to CTO, you receive the best tax credits ever. Pledge or donate online at ctoiowa.org. ctoiowa.org. The bottom line, it's for the kids and their future.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Dr. David Ball from Des Moines Eye Surgeons, your total eye care specialist specializing in cataracts and glaucoma care. Des Moines Eye Surgeons, 515-255-3546, dmisurgeons.com.
Iowa Catholic Radio needs you, whether it's assisting with events, answering the phone, distributing yard signs, or being a parish ambassador. Iowa Catholic Radio depends on you to help connect listeners with Christ. Email contact@iowacatholicradio.com to get involved.
And we are back. You're listening to Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio. I'm Deacon Mike Mano, and I'm here with Lisa Bourne, who's sitting in for Gina Knoll this week. And right now on our news line, we have Jonathan Butcher, who is an expert in education with the Heritage Foundation. Jonathan, welcome to the program. I don't think we've had you on before.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah. Well, we'll have you back again. Let's talk about education. The Supreme Court has come down with a couple of things recently about education. What do you take from all of that?
Well, two really big decisions last week, of course, one dealing with the use of racial preferences in college admissions, and it was the ruling, the majority opinion, extended Brown versus Board of Education, and they said so in their opinion, that this is really about getting rid of discrimination everywhere. And a powerful ruling, I think especially the history lesson that was provided by Justice Thomas in his concurring opinion, I thought were very strong. And then the other opinion was essentially revoking President Biden's extreme overreach in his attempt to shift the cost of student loans onto taxpayers, which is, he called it student loan forgiveness, but it was really just transferring the cost to taxpayers. If I had to say, the uniting feature here is that you have two cases that were really reinforcing the Constitution, which, of course, is the role of the Supreme Court. And I think it was a refreshing pair of rulings.
Yeah, it is a role of the court, but not according to the media. If you listen to it, they were way off track on both these things. Let's talk a little bit about the student loan forgiveness thing, because mainly because you brought it up last, and it's still in my mind. But the student loans. There is a big problem these days in the cost of higher education for people who want to go. Yet we're seeing colleges and universities sitting with these enormous endowments, and they are very hesitant to use any of those endowments, it looks like. What is the state these days of financing higher education for people?
Well, there are a few things going on. One is that under the Obama administration, the federal government essentially assumed the role of being the primary lender for students. And so now upwards of 90+% of student loans are underwritten by the federal government. And that's really not the appropriate role for Washington to have. And so that's the first problem we've got, is that Washington has an outsized role in lending money to students. The second is that when it comes to this federal spending on colleges, either through loan programs or otherwise, it has been shown through research by the Federal Reserve, among others, that when the amount of money that goes from Washington to colleges, tuition increases. Okay, so as we see Washington continue to play a large role in the student loan program, colleges have no incentive to reduce their tuition. There are very few schools that advertise that they keep their tuition prices down, one of which was actually Purdue under Mitch Daniels for several years. They were able to freeze their tuition costs, but other colleges have not. And so you have this really unhealthy dynamic between Washington essentially promising that the money's going to be there, and colleges saying, well, if that's the case, we can kind of put tuition wherever we want it. So I think what's happening now, right, is now that we have this ruling from the Supreme Court, what we are going to see is the Biden administration is going to try to still use some sort of regulations to make it less expensive or essentially phase out repayments. And it's called an income-driven repayment scheme, effectively.
As the cost of education seems to be going up, and the public perception of this seems to be, what are we paying for? At least that's what I get out of it. Is there a thought among educators that maybe we're going on the wrong track? Maybe we ought to be encouraging more vocational and trade education?
Yes, and this is kind of where the K-12 experience and the higher ed experience meet, right? I think that there has, for too long, been the assumption among K-12 educators that college is the destination that every student should head towards. And that's the wrong path for some students. No, we should not be encouraging every child to go to college, not because they are not capable, but because they may have an interest in something in the workforce that doesn't require a 4-year bachelor's degree, right? Students can, finish high school, enter, trade school, or study to be an electrician, plumbing. There are a number of technical skills that students can gain from 2-year colleges or trade schools that would allow them to have, very lucrative jobs, lucrative careers when they graduate. I think that anyone who owns a home knows, how expensive it is to have someone come and do repairs, especially in some pretty technical things. Electrician is one. And so I think that this idea that every student should go to college is sending some kids down a path where they will enter college, realize it's not for them, and that they would rather be in the workforce, and then they, may not finish, and they'll have substantial debt when they leave. Right. And that's the kind of problem that this sort of pipeline to college sets up for many students.
Yeah. All right, let's turn our attention now to the racial preferences case. This involved Harvard. I guess it was the University of, is it North Carolina or South Carolina? I think it was
North Carolina. That's right.
Yeah. And this had to do initially with the problem with Asian applicants for Harvard. I remember writing a column in The Wanderer a couple of years ago about some of these preferences and how they came about, and the idea that if a person applied as an Asian, they had a 20% chance of admission. If they applied as a black person, they had a 70% chance. You're familiar, I'm sure, with all those arguments. Why don't you kind of bring us up to date on all of that, because I know a lot of people out there are concerned that now we're turning off the floodgates for college to all the minority students, and I don't think that's what happened.
No, not at all. I mean, we have to remember that this case was brought because Harvard was actively discriminating against Asian American students who were applying to their school. And they were actually making it more difficult for Asian American students to enter because of their race. Right. I mean, this wasn't an ability thing. This was an act of racial discrimination, and that's what the court ruled. By doing so, the court also said, look, it is against the Constitution. It is contrary to our civil rights laws to give an individual additional preferences based on their race. and students should be judged on their merit, and they should be judged on their choices and their decisions, not on their skin color. And I think what's important to remember is, not only this very important, I think, legal principle that the court reaffirmed, but also that we had examples of bans on racial preferences before. For example, in California, there was a period after the passage of Proposition 209 where they banned racial preferences in public hiring and in colleges. And what we saw was actually that students were better matched with schools where they entered, right? If you have a student who is coming from a non-competitive K-12 school and yet is given a racial preference and admitted into a very selective higher education institution, those students are more likely to struggle with their grades, struggle to keep up, their confidence is crushed, they do not perform well, and that affects their later job prospects. And we also saw this in law schools as well. And so this mismatch theory has been tested and proven in research time and time again across both law schools as well as STEM programs in higher education. And so racial preferences have actually not been helping the students that they purport to be giving advantages to.
Yeah, and I think that match idea is a good one, because I know of a lot of people that have started they've gotten into a very prestigious school. They go there for a year or two, and they're not hacking it because, as you say, they don't match well with the student body and or the faculty, and so they end up dropping out, not getting the degree, and incurring a lot of debt in doing so, because a lot of these people are borrowing and their parents are borrowing to get them into school. Whereas if they would go to a local college or something like that where the pressure was a little bit less, they do very well.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, I think what we're seeing is not so much that the very high achieving, top of their class, black students, Hispanic students, Asian American students, I mean, they're going to be successful wherever they go, right? And if they apply to a school with scores that are at the top of their class at a rigorous K-12 school, they are going to be successful. It's the next tier down, right? Mm-hmm. It's the students who did well but were not at a competitive school, or it's the students who simply didn't have the background, the academic background, to compete at a place like an Ivy League school, which, those tended to be the schools that are, most famous for using racial preferences. Mm-hmm. By better matching students to, say, an HBCU, for example, or a state school, and allowing those, putting those students in a place where they can compete and where they can keep up with the rigor, that sets it up so those students do perform well, and then they do have a better chance at both the job market as well as graduate school if that's where they choose to go.
Yeah, and it seems to be that the educational institution, or the institutional educators, I guess is a better way to put it, seem to be frowning on some of these things. They're the schools that are, as you described, that are higher quality K through 12 are being kind of dumbed down. And I'm thinking of, is it the Jefferson School in Virginia? That was the best high school or listed anyways, the best high school in the United States, and they're starting to dumb that down now. And I think in New York, is it Stuyvesant School that they have in New York, that again was strictly a meritocracy to get into that, and again, there's kind of dumbing that down. What are we doing now with that?
Yes, I mean, we see this at the K-12 level, and especially during COVID. I mean, there were school districts that were doing away with letter grading, for example, during COVID, which, you can say for maybe a period of time that given the, frankly, mediocre quality of what assigned schools gave students during COVID, that perhaps it was best for for them to not keep track. But the idea that is a long-term solution is a terrible one. The case in Virginia, as well as up at Stuyvesant, that we should either not be telling students when they're National Merit Scholars or something like that is just flat wrong. I mean, we should be celebrating success and celebrating achievement and helping to encourage students, right, to pursue that. Now, by the same token, for the students that need help, for the students who are struggling, well, that's why we need more school choice options for these young people, right? I mean, that's why you have states around the country where lawmakers are, adopting education savings accounts so that students can pay for either personal tutors or go to a private school, including many Catholic schools that have been successful for generations, right?
They didn't close. In a lot of places, those Catholic schools and private schools stayed open, and you can see the results now.
You're absolutely right. I mean, the NAEP scores, the nation's report card, demonstrates that the scores of students in private schools in particular were much stronger. And your numbers about Catholic schools are right. I believe I saw a number as high as 90%, I think, of Catholic schools that reopened or either stayed open or opened sooner than their local assigned school counterparts. I mean, it was just a really strong performance from the private sector at a time when American communities really needed them. And I think that Americans now, today, as we see the continued problems and low performance coming out of assigned schools, recognize that at a time when they needed them, when Americans needed assigned public schools to be there to help, that they simply couldn't live up to what they were being asked to do. And I think that's why families are more interested in private education today.
Lisa?
Well, I guess I'm just wondering, you'd mentioned that the racial preferences was a little more prevalent, at least with the Ivy League schools. How prevalent has that been across the board, and how's that been allowed to go on as long as it has, if it's in fact been unconstitutional?
Yeah, that's a terrific question. So Ivy League schools are kind of the high-profile examples, but they're definitely not the only ones. Mm-hmm. There have been colleges around the country. A quick example for you, of course, was I mentioned California already, but even after Prop 209 passed in California, some of the schools, UCLA in particular, tried to get around the ban on racial preferences. And I think that's what we are going to see happen next. After this ruling, I anticipate that we are going to see colleges and universities try to get around this ban on racial preferences and still use race. Perhaps even they're going to try to use it as a determining factor, which will result in more lawsuits, I would expect. I think what we saw from the Biden administration right after the ruling, they sent a page of talking points and guidance to colleges about what to do after this ruling, effectively, saying that they disagreed with the ruling, and here are ways that, without using the word race, they were saying, here's how you can still use race as a factor. So I think this ruling was very important, both, philosophically as well as practically. But I think we do have to be vigilant, and for those colleges that we believe are still using race as a determining factor, I think we have to be prepared to make them be more transparent about their admissions processes and hold them accountable for what factors they're using.
And I think the people who are really lost in the shuffle here were these Asian applicants. As I read some of the briefs involved in this case and some of the original complaints that were filed, it does seem like the Asians were getting the short stick. They were being classified as white, which, of course, as you know, is suspect already if you're white, and just totally blocked out of the scholarships and of the admissions in these schools for apparently no apparent reason other than that they were Asian, and that didn't comport with what the schools thought was best for their student population.
Yes, and this isn't the first time. Asian American students had filed for lawsuits back in the 1980s. They had complained about this as well. And, if you go back even further in Harvard's past, there was a period of time in the 20s where they were discriminating against Jewish students as well. So, this is something that has been used, it's been used for a long time. I think you're correct to remind people that the point of this lawsuit, or what brought this lawsuit, was that Harvard was saying they were essentially taking away points from Asian American applicants as something, I think they called it the personality profile,
yes,
or the personality index part of the admissions
very subjective
process. Yes, that's right. And it's not not only is it not fair for these students, but it's also it harkens back to the just deep-seated problems with identity politics and in the different census categories. I mean, when you say Asian American student, I mean, my goodness, are you talking about South Asian? Are you talking about East Asian? You're talking about nations that have, very different lineages from each other and traditions, and as well as family histories and everything. So the census categories themselves have pretty serious problems.
Yeah, we had somebody on a couple of weeks ago talked about that maybe we ought to get rid of all these categories.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's right. There was a really terrific book by a professor named David Bernstein recently talking about how some certain nations are categorized as Asian when they're really European, and vice versa, and things like that. So there's definitely some arbitrariness in how these lines are drawn.
Sure, I'm filling out a application here. So what do you want me to be? I'll just check the correct boxes, and that'll help me out. Yeah. All right, Jonathan, want to thank you for joining us today. Certainly appreciate your time. People can follow you if they go to the Heritage's website, which I believe is heritage.org.
That's correct.
And there's always a wealth of information on the Heritage website. And as we've pointed out before in this program, we don't go that long without having somebody from the Heritage Foundation here to keep us on the straight and narrow. But we certainly appreciate your time today and what you're doing. And God bless you and your work. And thank you for coming up. We'll have you back.
Thank you.
Certainly. We appreciate you. Jonathan Butcher, who is a Senior Research Fellow in Education with the Heritage Foundation. And Lisa and I are going to take another break right now. We will be back in just a couple of minutes. In the meantime, you're listening to Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio comes from Story Construction, a 100% employee-owned general contractor, construction manager, and design builder serving a variety of commercial markets throughout Iowa. Learn more about career opportunities at storycon.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio provided by Mercy College of Health Sciences, where you can chart your course for more.
Mercy College provides unparalleled clinical rotations, hands-on learning, accelerated education, and flexible schedules. Since 1899, Mercy College has been transforming students into healthcare professionals. Guided by Catholic values, our faculty put classroom theory into practice. Students are prepared for roles in service and leadership throughout their own careers.
Learn more at mchs.edu. Mercy College of Health Sciences, mchs.edu.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Dental Associates, addressing your smile needs and dreams. 515-225-6742. Des Moines-DentalAssociates.com. Thank you, Dental Associates, for your support of Iowa Catholic Radio. Iowa Catholic Radio and the Iowa Catholic Radio Foundation welcome Walker Hayes, presented by Fairway.
But every now and then when I get paid, I gotta spoil my baby with enough grade.
In the Community Choice Convention Center Ballroom in Des Moines.
Yeah, we fancy like
Saturday, July 15th. Tickets are available at HighVTix.com. Celebrate country with BSB Design, Valiant Wealth, and Ball Team.
Got that Bourbon Street stay with the Oreo shades.
Walker Hayes, Saturday, July 15th at the Community Choice Convention Center Ballroom. Presented by Fairway.
Fancy light.
Thank you to our business partner, Matt Moffat, offering Fibernew Restoration Services. Eco-friendly and mobile, Matt can come to your home or business to repair, restore, and renew damaged leather, plastic, vinyl, fabric, and upholstery. Learn more at fibernew.com/Altoona-Des Moines.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio provided by Paul Martin and Paul Mitchell, owners of Imogene Ingredients. Imogene Ingredients supply specialized feed ingredients for livestock and pet diets to improve maternal and young animal health in both conventional and organic production.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Catholic Charities of the Diocese of Des Moines, where empowering individuals and strengthening families have been the cornerstone of care for a century. Services for neighbors in need include a food pantry, professional counseling, emergency family shelter, and refugee resettlement. At Catholic Charities, lives are transformed and you can be part of the mission. To learn more about how to help Catholic Charities fulfill Christ's promise of help and hope, visit CatholicCharitiesDM.org.
And we're back. You're listening to Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio. Lisa, again, thank you for sitting in with us today. But we had an interesting...
Oh, my word. Lots going on.
Interesting program today. So what do you want to talk about first?
Well, I'm hopeful that based on what Robert said, that Michigan law won't have legs, but we also know better than to assume that it won't.
Right.
I loved his passion and his eloquence and his willingness to fight. So knowing that there's folks like him on the ground there is encouraging.
Yeah. And one of the reasons why I always suggest that people with their spare change help fund these people is because they're the ones out there that are fighting for us. Now, of course, I got to say in the same breath, send your money to Iowa Catholic Radio, too, because you won't hear it. I mean, how many places have you heard this? You know, it comes up here, and sometimes we're the only voice out there talking about these things that are really a danger to your faith, you know, and what they're doing. And this concept of a hate crime, which that can mean anything, and it can mean whatever the person who's writing the law wants it to mean.
Absolutely. We've gotten far away from reality to where people are defining things so subjectively that it doesn't make any sense anymore. I don't like what you say, so I'm going to call it hate speech. And hate speech, from what he said, is just not even a thing. And
I'm entitled to my facts, you're entitled to yours, and well, we're entitled to one set of facts, the true facts. And, of course, nothing shows any more than the argument over gender identity now, that you can change on a dime. I want to be a girl today and shower with the girls in their locker room, so... You know, call me Michelle, not Mike. And some of these schools out there saying, okay, and we're not going to tell your parents you're doing this either.
It's all very disturbing, and not the least of which is the imposition on the folks that are not on board with it to go along with speech, the compelled speech, having to say that someone is something that they are not.
Right.
In addition to the violation of our children.
And like Robert says, this is demonic. This is demonic. Also, interesting discussion with Jonathan today about schools. We don't spend we don't spend a whole lot of time talking about education on the program, but when we do, we get a gem here.
Right.
And he was very good with that and what is going on in education today, and we got to pay more attention to that.
Absolutely. That Supreme Court ruling apparently upholding the Constitution, like you said, a breath of fresh air, very encouraging.
But as he pointed out, they're going to work around it.
Absolutely.
They're going to try and work around it.
The vigilance is necessary on all our parts.
That's right. So you win in the court and you go away and you find out you lost in public opinion because the media is on their side, or you lost through some loophole or some conniving person being able to figure out a way around the court ruling. So, yeah, we have to be vigilant.
Still work ahead.
Yeah, work ahead. Well, it's about out of time right now, so let's end with our Defender's Prayer. St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle, be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray, and do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. Thank you again, Lisa, for joining us today. Thank you to our guests and listeners. And don't forget that next Saturday, July 15th, is the Celebrate Country concert with Walker Hayes at the Community Choice Center. And you can get all the information on that from our website, iowacatholicradio.com, where you can also find podcasts of all of our old programs. So if you miss anything, you can look it up there. Thank you very much again. Thank you, Lisa, for coming. Until next time, have a blessed and peaceful week.
Our freedom of conscience and religion is being challenged by laws and regulations imposed by secular society. Faith on Trial with Defender of the Faith, Deacon Mike Mano. Faith on Trial on Iowa Catholic Radio, iowacatholicradio.com, and the Iowa Catholic Radio app.
Support for Faith on Trial and Iowa Catholic Radio provided in part by Imogene Ingredients.